Good evening and welcome back to HPU All Access. I'm Sierra Armstrong.
And I'm Adriana Myers. Let's get straight to it. High Point University held its 13th annual Veterans Day celebration this past Friday, which welcomed over 2,000 attendees, making it the largest in the event's history. Student volunteers from all areas of campus gathered outside the Nito and Mariana Quabain Arena to welcome and cheer for veterans as they entered the building. Attendees were provided a complimentary breakfast and a pin representing their military branch prior to hearing from President Nito Quabain himself. The celebration featured a talk by Kurt Muse, a U.S. Army veteran and author, and was marked by a Clark Eagle soaring above the audience while the HPU Chamber Singers performed America the Beautiful. Finally, the event included a Star of Service and Sacrifice for veterans to sign, which will be displayed on HPU's campus. The university was honored to host so many individuals who have dedicated their lives to serving our country, truly creating an atmosphere of appreciation and gratitude within the High Point community.
A local man died after a crash in Greensboro on Interstate 40, eastbound off-ramp on McConnell Road. Police say on Tuesday at 5 a.m., the Greensboro Police Department responded to the Interstate 40 eastbound off-ramp on McConnell Road for a crash involving injuries. Stephen Miller, 66, of Greensboro, was driving a 2000 Lincoln Town Car from the ramp onto McConnell Road, and the crash happened with a 2016 Jeep Compass. The driver of the Jeep was treated at the scene for minor injuries, and Miller was taken to the hospital. Miller died from the injuries from the crash on Sunday. The GPD Crash Reconstruction Unit responded and is investigating.
Well, if you think you already know our Chief of Campus Police and Security, Deborah Duncan, pretty well, think again. Our own Jake Vesey recently caught up with Chief Duncan at the police headquarters for an exclusive sit-down interview where she answers some of the most pressing questions that are on the minds of our HPU family. And no subject was off the table. And Jake joins us now at the desk for some more detail. So what can you tell us about this interview?
Yeah, well, Chief Duncan, she's probably one of the most knowledgeable person that I've ever met. You know, her experience is remarkable. She actually started her career back here in High Point over 40 years ago. So it's such a full circle moment, and the package has just been something really cool that I had the opportunity to work on. So I'm really excited for you all to check it out. 2 years ago, High Point University made one of its biggest additions to its campus by adding a brand new campus police team. In charge of heading and creating this police team was longtime police chief Deborah Duncan. She explains to me in an exclusive interview how this was a full circle moment for her coming right back here to High Point University almost 40 years later where her career started. Ride here to High Point campus police has been a roller coaster. It's been nothing short of that. You started your career in 1980 at the High Point Police Department. You worked in the city's highest crime areas before becoming a detective in youth crimes, field training officer, a supervisor, and an undercover cop. You were, in 1997, promoted to captain. So what does it mean to be able to come right back here all these years later and be able to start a High Point campus police team?
Well, in 2001, I left High Point and went to Virginia Tech as their police chief. Now, the reason that I got that job at Virginia Tech is because my part-time job when I was working for High Point Police was High Point University. So back then, there were no fountains. It wasn't the glamorous campus that you see today. It was just a few buildings, and I used to work the homecomings and move in by myself. And we also had a city street, a crosswalk that went across Quabain Avenue. Of course, all that's been changed now, but it went right across the campus, and it was a actual city street, so cars were coming by, and it was right in the middle of campus. So it's a really big difference. But anyway, I left High Point and High Point University and went to Virginia Tech, and I was the police chief there for 5 years. And then I came back to North Carolina and was the police chief in a city in Monroe, which is right outside of Charlotte. So I stayed there for 7 years as the police chief, and I retired and then ran for city council, went to law school, and then while I was in law school and on the city council, I had a a consultant called me and asked me if I would go to Johnson C. Smith, and if it's a private university in Charlotte, and just be there for 90 days and while they found a police chief. So I went over there for 90 days, and 4.5 years later, I was still there, but by that time I graduated from from the law school and passed the bar, and then went to Massachusetts at Smith College, where I was tasked with creating a police department. So they wanted a police department at Smith College, and that was right when everything happened with the defund the police and the George Floyd incident, so it was very difficult to say the least, but I stayed there for 2.5 years. And then I saw in the newspaper and also some other publications that High Point University was looking for a police chief, and they wanted to start a police department. I went, wow. So what happened was I sent an email to Barry Kitley, Senior Vice President, and said, hey, this is who I am. I'm interested. If you've already hired a chief, disregard my email. And as soon as I hit the send button, he contacted me back, and so the rest is history. So I came here. It'll be 2 years in January.
Wow, that's so wonderful. What a full circle moment, right?
Oh, yeah.
Starting a police team from scratch is no easy task, but Chief Duncan had several steps before even being able to hire anyone.
To start a police department, it's not just as easy as saying, okay, I'm gonna go out and hire police officers and we're gonna staff the university with police officers. You have to get You have to go through the state, and you've got to do articles of incorporation, just like a business. So we had to go through that. We had to get our board of trustees to buy into it, to say, yes, we want a police department. So that took some meetings, and then we had to, like I said, we had to go through the Secretary of State and set the police department up through the university. So that we did that, and then we had to go to the law enforcement component of the state, which is under the Department of Public Safety, and so we had to go under that and set everything up, and then I had to get sworn, which I had been sworn in North Carolina since 1978, with the exception of the time I was in Virginia Tech. So, but I still had to go through that whole background process to get sworn all over again. So when that happened, I was the first police officer that High Point University had, and then I went to hire our police officers. So we lucked out by getting a recruiter who was a retired Greensboro police officer. So we started putting out feelers and advertisement on Facebook, social media, the retired law enforcement pages to say, hey, if you want to continue your law enforcement career and you want to do something different, partnering with our students, being mentors and that sort of thing, and also keeping the campus safe, which is our primary focus, then High Point is the place for you, and to come on and let's apply. So we did start getting some application, and we got some really great applicants. So we had to go through the same thing. Some of them were retired, so we went through the same process. They were still sworn. Some of them were working at the airport. I hired 5 from the Greensboro airport who retired from Greensboro, and they went to the airport. But once I hired 1 from the airport, then they started coming from the airport because they found out this is a great place to be. Yeah. And it's a different type of policing. I mean, when you're a police officer in the city or the federal or state levels, you're very much enforcement oriented. And with universities, it's more of relationship building. It's more of, we're going to keep you safe, but it's a mutual responsibility. I can't keep you safe if you're not going to help me keep you safe. Mm-hmm. So, we're looking at it like that. But does that mean that we don't do enforcement? No, that's not what that means. But it's not really our primary focus. So I went to a meeting last week where they said, we have a lot of speeders on campus. Can't you do something about the speeders? Well, we're not going to be able to get a radar gun and sit there and write people for speed. First of all, you can't do it on a private campus. Number one, it'd be a little bit difficult. But we're trying to do other things like put in, the speed bumps and that kind of thing. So, but I don't want to digress with that. But just, having that relationship and helping students. And I remember saying when I first went to Virginia Tech, and it's really true, and I say this in orientations, especially to parents, I said a lot of times, our college students, they leave home for the first time. They leave their common sense sometimes at home, and so they do things maybe that they shouldn't do, or, just to have fun. I know when my daughter was in college, she was like, oh, but I want to have fun and I want to do all this kind of stuff. Well, that's good, but let's make sure that you're safe and when you're doing it. And that's what we're here, is to make sure that you have a safe experience. Because I'm going to tell you, this is my philosophy. This is the most beautiful campus ever, right? And we got all these buildings and all these great schools and everything is happening. But if you don't feel safe, none of that matters. So, I mean, in my opinion, safety is so, so important, and that's my job, and that's my goal.
Yeah, and I can say that I feel 100% safe on campus. Here at HBU, the university utilizes a passport-only entry procedure, which means to enter academic buildings after hours, you need to show your school-issued passport to gain entry.
We have 14 police officers counting me, but we've got 70-plus security guards. Not counting our traffic, crossing guards and all that. So we all have to work together in order to make everybody safe. Just like we have the officers that are staffed at all the welcome centers or the points of entry on the campus. We're here 24/7. So we're trying to keep you safe. Now, does that mean that whatever can happen somewhere else, can happen here?
Yeah.
Yes, it can. So we've got to, we do our best to provide a secure campus, but then we need we need your help. For example, we got students that says, hey, I'm going to sneak my friends in who's not students, and they put them in the trunk of their cars, and then they go and bring them on campus. Well, we've got 2,200 cameras on campus. Just so you know, we've got all these cameras, and we sit there and we look at the cameras, and sometimes we see people coming in, they park, and then they open the trunk, and here comes all these people out of the truck. So, it's just sign them in.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep people out that don't need to be on. But if you want to bring somebody on, it's a guest or a visitor, it's not hard. Just put them in iVisitor and bring them on. You don't need to put them in the trunk of the car. But those are the kind of things that we have to look out for, because people don't think, and I guess you don't think until something happens, and then it's like, well, how did they get on campus? So.
Here at HBU, campus safety and security is a top priority. That's why the university, in conjunction with the police department, have installed more than 60 of these care points located on campus, with more than a dozen of them located off campus. It's really easy to use too. If you're ever feeling unsafe, all you have to do is go up to it, press the emergency button, and you'll be connected to an operator at the telecommunications site in the police department.
First of all, we've got 60 on campus, but we've also got some that are off campus, because we have off-campus housing. So we've got like Quabain Avenue. So we've got about 8 of them on Quabain Avenue as well. So they're placed all over. There's cameras in them, so that way, we can see a lot, and then they don't pan or anything, but there are the cameras in there. There's also a phone. All you got to do is push the button. Somebody answers it, says what's your emergency, and you can talk back on the camera. So those are important. They got the blue lights on it. You turn it on, and it has the lights. Also on off-campus housing, we have those floodlights. So anytime, if you walk in the front yard on one of our houses, it's going to light up like a football field. So, we are, like I said, we're all about safety, so we're always trying to come up with something that's going to make sure that you're safe. And also, when you come on campus, a lot of people don't know, we have license plate readers. So if you come on campus, we can know, you have a shot of your license plate, so we know if you're coming on campus and what time you're here too.
Wow, that's really interesting. I would have never known that if you didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit now about filing a complaint. So there's so many different options in case you are feeling unwell or unsafe about a situation. One of those being speaking to a Title I coordinator in case of it's a sexual matter or just anything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Title IX coordinator, we do have one at the university. Her name is Nicole Rios, and she handles all of our Title IX. If there's any type of sexual assault, she handles those, and discrimination and all that. It goes through her office. So you can talk with her, and she can guide you through the process. We have a lot of resources, including, our mental health and a lot of other resources that we can put you in touch with. Also, any type of abuse, domestic violence and all that. We have the resources, or we have the resources that we've partnered with in the city or the county that can assist. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you go and talk to the Title IX coordinator, that it's gonna be a police type matter, because that's not the case. If you don't want to go that route, let's just say that you do not wanna go pursue any type of charges or anything like that, then you don't have to involve the police. So it can just be from a Title IX perspective and a university perspective, and you have the conduct. So you've got a conduct course that you can go through the university, that's university sanctions. So you go to conduct, they do anything from suspend you, to interim suspension, to expulsion, to no contact orders, and all kinds of things that you can go through that route. If at some point you say, you know, I think I wanna go prosecute, I think this needs to go to court, I think this is a real problem, there's multiple victims, let's say for example, then you can also file a police report. And then we can go through it by, you know, from that respect as well. But I wanna make clear that you can also talk to a police officer, and if you don't wanna prosecute, we don't have to prosecute. But if if you're, for example, you're a victim of a sexual assault, you've been raped, or whatever, a lot of times we'll need to get evidence and do what they call a rape kit. Back in the day, they called it a rape kit, I think now it's a sexual assault kit, but that way we get a lot of evidence. So if you decide to prosecute, then we've got that evidence. But if you decide a year from now to prosecute and we don't have that evidence, it's gonna be a lot harder to do. So we try to work together, but we work with Title IX, but it's separate, because we don't mix the two, because we don't want people to know that, you know, we're not going to work, you know, as far as not working together, but to say, well, we know if you go in and talk to Title IX, we know about it, because that's not the truth. We don't know about it. Now, we have the, changing gears just a little bit to get back to your question on the anonymous reporting. We have what is known as the LiveSafe or the LifeSafe app. You can go on that and put anonymous, and trust me, it is anonymous, because I'll get them, but we'll get things like, there's somebody smoking pot, or there's somebody doing, you know, they're doing drugs and they're in this room or that room, and we get a lot of those, all the way to, loud music or something like that. But we get a lot of anonymous tips, and we can follow up on them. So if you do say something anonymous, we'll follow up on it. But a lot of times it helps us to know, you know, depending on what it is, if you can, you know, tell us who you are. But if you don't want to do that and you want to report something, there is that route as well.
Got it. Now, is that does that happen a lot? Is that an often occurrence where people will submit anonymous tips, or?
Surprisingly enough, they submit the tips through that app, but they will put their name on it. Or they'll put their email, or they'll say, hey, my name is George Smith, and I live at Cafe 210, and in Cafe 212, the music's so loud, or whatever, and we'll go over there. But you'd be surprised how many people put their names. There is some anonymous, but not in general.
Got it. So let's talk now about so far this year, some crime statistics so far from this year. So we'll start here with some weapons violations. So far this year, there have been 6 weapons violations. That's up 3 already from all of last year. Is this because of an increase in patrol?
That's part of it, I think, and we've got metal detectors also at the arenas and all our sports facilities and everything. People go through that, or they'll come up and say, hey, I've got my CCW permit or whatever. So a lot of that has been an increase in awareness and that sort of thing. But the ones that you're talking about, some of the ones, 4 of them were students, and they weren't, when we say weapons, we're talking about knives. So there were some issues where we had some students that brought some knives or some brass knuckles or things that that's against the statute to have on a college campus, those sort of things. And then we've had a couple people bring handguns, but they were not students. But then again, we were able to find out, one of them had a concealed weapon permit and didn't know that he wasn't supposed to, or says he didn't know that he wasn't supposed to have one. And there's a lot more to that, because we investigate to find out, why are you coming on the campus? Why are you bringing a weapon when you know that you can't bring a weapon, and that sort of thing. So it depends. We had someone that come in and had a shotgun in the car, but they were going hunting the next day because hunting season was open. So oh, well, I didn't know I couldn't bring my rifle. I was spending the night with my friend, and I was just bringing my rifle because I was gonna get up early and go hunting. So those are the types of things that were coming in. There wasn't anything that anybody was trying to do any kind of harm or anything like that. They just had a weapon when they shouldn't have had the weapon. And one of them had it was in plain sight on the console of the car too. So that's another way that we're able to do that. And then I talk to people and find out what's the reason why you have the weapon and that sort of thing. And then we try to handle it that way.
And this just shows why these welcome centers are so important and that they really do help deter anything from happening, and it just shows the safety level that campus provides. It's really remarkable. We also should talk about here that let's talk now about the liquor law violations. So from 2020 to 2022, there was a 45% decrease in liquor law violations. The number went from 292 to 161 last year. That's a 45% increase. Like we talked about, is this due to an increase in the campus police patrol, or is this just because people are just being more responsible?
I think a little bit of both. But then again, we've got a lot of alcohol overdoses. So I will say that, like I said, people come to college and they just start drinking and don't realize how much they've had to drink. Those aren't included, because if we call an ambulance because you've had too much to drink and you go to the hospital, we don't include that in the stats. The only thing that we're including is if there's alcohol and you're drinking it or that kind of thing. But we don't want to start tracking, and they don't require that. Our federal partners don't require that. So those are. We'd like to say it's because of awareness, and it's because we talk to students about the dangers, and we've also partnered with mental health that come up and got a grant, I think this year, on trying to combat underage drinking. So they give them, we say, hey, if you're going to drink, you got to go eat breakfast, and you got to do this kind of thing, and stop after this many. And that's been helpful. Actually, a lot of students was really interested in that. So, I think it's a little bit of both. Next year it could go back up, and then it can go back down. It's just like anything else, is cyclical. So, it goes up and down. So we try to keep it down, but sometimes it'll go back up, and we have to address it when that happens.
Yeah, to follow up on that, this year already there have been 112 liquor law violations. That's in comparison to the 161 last year. So that number is higher than it probably should be, because we're not even halfway through the semester. So
right, and if you have your RD or your RA comes to your room and you're underage, for example, and there's liquor in there, they'll take those bottles out, and that counts as a violation. So it doesn't mean that's been arrested. That many people's been arrested and charged. It could just be because you had it in your room, and you're not supposed to have it, or you're carrying it outside, you're not supposed to do that, so you have to pour it out. So there's a lot of things that are part of that.
yeah, brings up a good point. Residence halls. Let's talk about that. Residence halls are where crime usually happens, if it does happen. What steps are you and your team making or using to prevent crime from happening in residence halls?
Well, first of all, we'd like for our students not to prop doors open, not to put tapes on the locks, and that sort of thing, where anybody can just come walking in. So especially that's important on the houses. So a lot of times we'll do that. We'll walk the fence line. So there's the fence around everything. We walk the fence line and look at the back doors to see if there's anything propped open. And if it is, we're going to wake you up and say, hey, you need to lock the door, shut the door. So that's one thing that we're trying to do. We go in the actual residence halls, and just to make sure that doors are locked. We want to, keep your doors locked. I know that it's hard to do, and especially if you have a roommate and they come in, they may forget it and wake you up and all that. So you want to take the doors, but those are the types of things that we're looking for. So we're always walking to check to make sure. And because people can jump over the fence, and if they jump over the fence, they can go right into the house. But we do have a system where somebody jumps over the fence, it sets off an alarm. So that's good. We're trying to put that everywhere, but it's not quite everywhere yet. But we're always trying to figure out what we can do to make students safer. So we ask you to partner with us and pay attention and don't work against us and, you know, like I said, keep your doors locked, know who you got, who you're bringing in and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and student safety is the #1 priority.
Absolutely, because if it weren't for the students, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, and I'm gonna finish off right here. We talked briefly about it, but we should talk about it again because it is the #1 thing here on campus, and it's the connection between the students and the officers, security officers, crossing guards. I'll give you an example. Miss Tammy, the crossing guard who stands in front of Wannick, and she hugs everyone when they cross the street. Or Miss Val, the security guard who is known, right, for all the hugs. Why is everyone so connected to the security officers, crossing guards, police officers?
Well, I think it makes them feel safe and it makes them feel like they're at home. And that's what we want to do here at High Point University. We want you to feel safe and we want you to feel like that you're at home because this is your home. You know, I mean, you might live in Wisconsin, but today, High Point University in High Point, North Carolina is your home. So we want you to feel safe, just as safe as if you were at home.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chief Duncan. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. It was wonderful talking to you.
Well, thank you. Anytime.
That was such a cool interview. Thank you for such the insight.
Yes, of course. And after the holiday break, I take an exclusive behind-the-scenes look into the night patrol shift of an HPU police officer. Stay tuned for the release of that.
Thanks, Jake. Looking forward to it. And that does it for our broadcast this evening. Thank you to Chief Duncan for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. And thank you for watching as always. Join us after the Thanksgiving break, same time, same place. For HPU All Access, I'm Sierra Armstrong.
And I'm Adriana Myers. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving, High Point.